Have you in church with us. So Luke chapter 6 this evening in God's Word, Luke chapter 6. I recently read a story about two brothers. During World War II, they were fighting on the same front, and as the battle raged, the enemy broke through their defensive line. The enemy came across, and the order was given: retreat, fall back, and as it does in those types of scenarios, it turns into absolute chaos. The enemy was charging forward, and this army was falling back. These two brothers, they had been fighting near each other, but when this order was given, they lost sight of each other. They didn't know what had happened to one another. And as the army fell back, they got into a new defensive position. They established a new line. The one brother that was there, he started to go up and down the line. Have you seen my brother? Have you seen my brother? Have you seen my brother? And as he made his way up and all the way back, he wasn't able to find his brother. But there was one man that says, yes, he looks exactly like you. I saw him. He was wounded and he went down. And he started to question him further. He kind of found out what area it was. And they went to that area, and he said, if you will go out that way, your brother's out there somewhere. So he made the decision. He crawled underneath the wire, and he began to crawl across the battlefield, the no man's land in between the two armies. He crawled from body to body. For hours he crawled, looking for his brother. And finally, he saw, like on a silhouette, he saw what he thought was his brother. Man, that has to be him. I recognize him. I've known him my whole life. That has to be my brother. He started to crawl over there. And as he was crawling, he was saying his brother's name, saying his brother's name, saying his brother's name. And as he got closer, the body moved and rolled over and started to face him. Instantly, he knew, that's my brother. And as he crawled up, his brother had a smile on his face, and he said, I knew you would come. I knew you would come. And you know, as I read that story, it was amazing to me because what ended up happening was the one brother was able, he just risked it all. He took his wounded brother, he threw him over his shoulder, and he carried him back across the line, got him to safety, and they both made it through the war. And you know, it's amazing to me how many parallels there are between Christianity and military combat. And the first law of combat is cover and move. And what that is people working together to support one another, to help one another, to protect one another as they are advancing or as they are retreating, whatever the case might be. But that first law of combat is based on the power of relationships. And the arena of succeeding in relationships, it really is about us working together with each other and having each other's backs. Building strong and dependable relationships is something that we are going to need to do to accomplish any undertaking in life. To build and maintain trust is important. And even serving God over the long term, we need each other. Can you say amen? We need to have strong relationships. And tonight I want to preach a sermon. This was actually inspired by a question that Randy asked me. I want to preach a sermon that I've entitled The Power of Relationships out of Luke chapter 6. If you're there, let's read this, verse 27 through 31. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. And pray for those who spitefully use you. To him who strikes you on the one cheek, offer the other also. And from him who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who asks you, and from him who takes away your goods, do not ask them back. Look at verse 31. This is the golden rule. And just as you want men to do to you, you also do to them likewise. Amen. I want you to think with me, first of all, this evening about what is a relationship. Now tonight I want to ask you to very quickly run through the Rolodex of your mind and heart. And I want you to come up with one person in your life that you could say, that is the most important person to me in my entire life? Now, let's not over-spiritualize this. I've asked that question to people before in the past. Who's the most important person in your life? What's the most important relationship? And the Christian answer is Jesus. So let's not over-spiritualize it. It can't be Jesus. That is kind of like a given, right? Jesus is the one that we need to be closest to, fully transparent with, and 100% honest towards. That's a given. That needs to be there in place. I'm talking about a person, though. Who in your life, as a person, this could be a family member, a long-term friend, a long-term relationship, someone that you depend on. Who is that is the closest person to you in your life? Because it's important that you're able to answer that question. Genesis 2, verse 18, God, He said it is not good that man should be alone. We could say women too. It's not good that we should be alone. As men or women, we shouldn't be isolated by ourselves. We shouldn't be alone. It's not good. God, the one who created you, is the one that said that. He's the one that put that in place. So think about how many lessons we come across in the Bible. Psalms, Proverbs, all through the Old Testament in various ways, shapes, or forms. Jesus Himself, how many lessons in the Bible that were taught to us, like our text, that is about relationships. Again and again and again, the Bible is a relationship-oriented book. It's from cover to cover. It's a life lesson book about how we're supposed to interact with each other and interact with God. In our text, Jesus said, love your enemies. That is a relationship arena. Now, He doesn't say that we're the haters in the situation, right? And you probably had somebody say that to you. You say something to them, man, you're a hater, right? Love your enemies. That doesn't mean that they're an enemy to us, like we are angry at them, like we don't like them. Am I the only person that you've just been around somebody, you've never done anything wrong to them, you barely know them, and they are your enemy? They treat you like an enemy. They talk to you like an enemy. They're out to get you like an enemy, and you're like, what the heck did I do? I don't even know you. You just don't like me. You know, over the course of my life, I've had people who didn't like me because I was a man. I'm sorry. I was born that way. I know we live in a generation where people think that they can just transition, but, you know, I don't. You are what you are, the way God made you. But I've had people get mad at me because I hate men, and you're a man. It's like, whoa. Like, I'm sorry. You got maybe hurt in the past, but that's not my issue. I've had people that didn't like me because I was a surfer skater, right? Just the look that I had, my hair, the way I did it at one time in my life. That was my image. That was my persona. And they judged me based on that. People that haven't liked me because of my political party. People that haven't liked me because of a job that I held, the position, the job title. I don't like you because you are the boss. And you could tell with the way that people treat you. You show up and you're like, wow, yesterday we were friends. I got a promotion at the end of the day, and now we're enemies. Now I'm the person that you're against. This is crazy. As a Christian, people have not liked me simply because I'm a Christian. And then you magnify that even further because you're a pastor. And on and on and on we could go, right? People in life, there are going to be people that just don't like you. And it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. So think about our scripture from that perspective. That you could do everything right, and yet you still have enemies. Yet there are still people who don't like you, who will mistreat you, who will not be kind to you. And in all of that, Jesus tells us to love those people. He tells us to go out of our way to be kind to those people. In John chapter 15, Jesus, He gives us a command. It's not a suggestion, it's not a nice idea, but it's a command. And Jesus says, love one another as I have loved you. How do we love people the way that Jesus loved us? Think about that. Jesus was being whipped and beaten and tortured and nailed to a cross because He loved us. That day when that was taking place, those people that were doing that were Jesus' enemy. They were incited, they were enraged demonically, but they behaved like an enemy. He was an innocent man, but he was being persecuted and put to death because they were an enemy of what he represented as God in the flesh. They didn't like him. And yet he's hanging on the cross. Father, forgive them because they don't understand what they're doing. You know, there's going to be a lot of times when people are coming against you, when they're treating you like an enemy, and they have no idea what they are doing. They don't know that those things that they just said are hurting you. They don't know that the things that they just did to advance their own agenda has actually hurt you and set you back. They don't even think about that because they don't care about what happens to other people. But because of that, you become the enemy. You know, Jesus is trying to get us to understand that as believers, one of our main objectives in our walk with God in our life, one of our main objectives should be to build relationships that go deeper than just that cordial acquaintance. Hey, how are you doing? How's the kids? How's the family? You know, as a salesperson, we've got reps that come in and will try to sell us their products. And they'll bring us cookies. They'll bring us treats and snacks. And they come in, how are you doing? How's everything going? Is everything happening the way that you need it to in your life? And you know what? At the end of the day, they don't really care about us. They're just trying to make a sale. It's an acquaintance, but it has no real value. There's no deeper relationship. You know, it's just all right there on the surface. But the Bible talks about relationships that go far deeper than that. In 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 11, it says, encourage one another and build one another up just as you are doing. Now think about this. Encourage and build up. So we can extrapolate from that, from what is said there, that if we are going to build someone else up, that we have to be there at a low point in their life. We have to be somebody that's connected or close enough to them that we are going to be able to see them when they are down and out. There's a lot of people that they don't want anybody to know that they're going through anything. How are you doing? Fine. Man, their world is falling to pieces, but they're fine. And they don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want to tell anybody that they are going through it. But that's exactly when we need people. And that's exactly what needs to happen. Relationships need to go deeper than just, everything's okay. Don't worry about me. I got this. It needs to go deeper than that. There are people who will never ask you for help, but they need your help. And when they do recognize and when they do realize, then the question is will you be willing to help them? Will you be willing to be that person that comes as a friend to help somebody else? And that's what our text is talking about. Can you see something going on in somebody else's life? Maybe they won't even ask you for help, but can you recognize, are you close enough to another person that you could recognize, and something's up here. You're having a bad day. Let's go get a cheeseburger. Let's go talk about it. Let's go on a walk. Whatever it might be. But that comes as we have deeper, more substantial relationships in our lives. And then there's the opposite side of that. Are there people in your life who will be willing to come to you and help you when you are in a time of need? You see, when you're by yourself, when nobody cares, when nobody notices, that's a really desperate place to be. When you are truly alone. There have been times in my life where I was truly alone. And I was on the verge of ending my life because I felt, what's the use? Nobody cares, nobody sees. And there was legitimately nobody there to care, nobody there to see. But it was in those times where God, thank God, that God came in and He got a hold of my heart. Thank God I had a close enough relationship with Jesus to know, like, that's a thought from hell. God would never tell me to do that to myself. God wants me to live, He wants me to be a blessing, and He wants to bless me. But that had to come through a deeper sense of my relationship with God. But then also, that never would have really happened with my friends there. With people that were there to care for me. Proverbs 27:10. Better is a neighbor or a friend nearby than a relative far away. You know what Proverbs is telling you there? Sometimes it's better to have good friends that are right here with you going through life than a family member or a friend who's disconnected from your life, who can't help, who's unwilling to help. I have 3 brothers, but I'm closer to the men in church, to my friends in church, than I am to my 3 brothers. I can pick up the phone right now and call one of my friends and they will answer. But if I try to call a brother, I may not hear from them for years. Because there's something powerful about building deep relationships and deep friendships. Let's think, secondly, how to measure your relationships. You know, far too often people are looking at their relationships based on what somebody else can offer them. Have you ever been around somebody or you realize that you were in one of these relationships where it was one-sided? Which is, I will be your friend when you make me look good. I will be your friend when you are buying me things. I will be your friend when you are doing things that help or benefit me. Have you ever had a friend like that? Where it's like, man, do you not, I mean, I know you have a job, but do you not ever have money? Because I'm always paying for you. And you know, that's fine. There's something about that. There's not, if someone's offering, that's not the issue. But what I'm getting at is those people who are, you can tell and you know that you are there just to get stuff from me. You're not there to have a mutual friendship and it's a back and forth give and take. I'll be there, I'll be your friend as long as you can help me, but don't expect anything from me. There are people that are like that. Those are not good friends, but they are there. Proverbs 18 verse 24, it says, a man of many companions may come to ruin. Think about that. A man of many companions still comes to a place where their life is destroyed. But listen, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So he's bringing out both sides here. He's saying, he's drawing a line in the sand. He says, there are people you know, people that you like or people that like you. They're cordial relationships. You have a lot of, hey, I know who you are. It's good to see you, Bill. Hey, it's, Gina, like, it's okay. It's good to see you. Well, whatever. But then there are people that are real friends. People that come over and sit down on your couch and you have those conversations where you look eye to eye and they know who you are and you know who they are. Right? There's nothing to hide. This is who I am and what I'm going through. Those friendships are the ones that you need to build. Statistically, they say you will only have a friend like that, 1 to 4 people, types of friends like that in your entire life. But it's important that we build those types of relationships. I believe as Christians we can have those types of relationships on a far greater number than just 1 to 4 people in your life. I think that we can have deeper relationships with a large number of people if we're willing to. We all have people who we know they'll just pass by during a time of need. We have those people that you know that you don't see me, you don't care, but we know who we are. But it doesn't matter. What we truly need is people that will come alongside of us and that will help us. People who truly do know us and truly do care about us. So how do we measure our relationships then? How can you tell who's who? How do we know which person is a real friend versus which person is not a real friend? It all comes by asking a few simple questions. The first is, do you trust them and do they trust you? Do you have a relationship built on trust? Is your friendship a trusting friendship? Do you listen to them? Do they listen to you and take your advice? Do you respect them? Do they respect you? Do they do things that they know will annoy you? Or do they do things or not do things because they know, like, hey, that bugs my friend and they are my friend, so I'm not going to do that. And that's a respect issue. What level of influence do you have on your friend? And are you able to influence your friends as well? Those simple questions will kind of give you a barometer. Read the temperature in the room of whether or not that is a true friend versus an acquaintance. How do I know who really cares? It all comes down to trust, being willing to listen, a level of respect, and a level of influence that's taking place relationship to relationship. You know, a relationship that is built upon those four things, trust, listening, respect, and influence, is one that actually has some substance to it. And those are the types of relationships that we need to strive to build. If you don't have those things with somebody, you don't have a deep relationship with them. In our text, Jesus, he's telling believers to turn the other cheek. Be willing to give your cloak and your tunic, to treat others the way that you would like to be treated. Now, if we get honest, those are exactly the types of things that will build a deeper level of trust, an openness to listen, a greater level of respect, and establish a more impactful influence in lives. Jesus is saying, listen, I want you to build relationships. They might be your enemy today, but they don't have to be your enemy tomorrow. The decision is up to you. How are you going to treat them? How are you going to respond? How are you going to approach this relationship, this situation? Are you going to build, or are you going to let it be destroyed? Now, there are some people that they are just not going to be your friends. They're toxic, they're hurtful, and you're going to need to be able to see that and say, you know what, you're not good for me. I'm going to move away from you. And that's a very healthy thing to do, right? And this is probably one of the hardest things for women more than men, because women are very relationship oriented and they want to have that connection to everybody and be that good friend to everybody. But there are just some times where you have to, like, hey man, I've got to detach my emotions right here because you are a toxic person and I can't have you around. But that makes those other relationships that much more vital. So let's close with building strong and lasting relationships. So there are some things that we can do to build strong and lasting relationships. And one of the things that we need to do is be open to friendships first. I mean, there's a lot of people that are way guarded when it comes to relationships. I've been hurt in the past. I don't trust anybody, and they're guarded. You're never going to be able to have good friendships if you're not open to friendships. If you're resisting and pushing people away, you're not going to have friends. People are going to come and try to be your friend, and you could stop it, right? You could keep people at arm's length. Nope. I don't let anybody in. I'm not going to do it. But Proverbs 18, verse 24, it says, a man who has friends must himself be friendly. And so one of the kind of like basics of building good friendships is be a good friend. Is be friendly. Be open to having those relationships. You know, there's a point in every relationship where we must be willing to drop our guard and become vulnerable to a certain point. Not that we're totally open, right? But there's a certain level of vulnerability that's needed to start, maintain, and build any relationship. And this is the only way to build deep and lasting relationships, is to become vulnerable with other people. And this is also much easier when people that you're trying to become friends with are people that truly care about you. And so that's where you start running that barometer, run that test, ask those questions. They're there because they're trying to help, because they're trying to let you help them, right? They have your best interest in mind. You have their best interest in mind. Those are the things that lay a foundation for real friendships. The second thing that we can do is that you must be willing to forgive. Every relationship, every friendship is going to have times of conflict. There are going to be times where you don't see eye to eye with another person. Doesn't matter who you are, where you're at in life. That is just part of relationships. Relationships are give and take, right? They're two people working together and coming to an agreement. Sometimes it's actually spoken about, and sometimes it's just the nonverbal, non-spoken agreements like, yeah, hey man, I know you don't like that, so I'm not going to do that. The last time I seasoned the food that way, I could tell you didn't like it, so I'm not just going to keep doing that every time you come over. Those are the types of small, subtle cues that you can pick up on. But sometimes we need to be willing to do what the Bible said. Turn the other cheek. Sometimes someone's going to say something to you that you don't like, that you don't want to hear. But that doesn't mean that they're not a good friend. It actually might mean that they are a really good friend. Sometimes we need people who are willing to speak truth in love. We need people that will call us out on bad ideas, bad decisions, things that we've said that were hurtful. Sometimes we need a friend that will come and tell us, like, whoa, the road you are on is not a good road. Don't do that. Not all hard words are words of rejection. Not all hard words are words of hurtfulness. Sometimes you need to hear those things. Proverbs 27:6, it says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. What does that mean? Faithful are the wounds of a friend. You know what that means? Sometimes your friend is going to tell you something that you don't want to hear. But it's for your good. It's to help. It's to build. Tonight, do you have people who can speak to you openly and honestly? Do you have people who are able to call you onto the table about things? It's healthy. It will help you grow if you have people like that. But there is in that the need for forgiveness in every friendship. So forgiveness and friendships are inseparable. You're going to need that. The third thing is to have a servant's heart. If you're going to build good friendships, you're going to have that heart that says, I'm here for you more than I'm here for me. Having a servant's heart will mean that you're going to try to find ways to be a blessing to the people around you. I want to be a blessing to you. I want to help you the best that I can. I want you to be excited when I enter the room because I'm a blessing to you. And that all starts with the willingness to pray for people. This is part of Randy's idea that we bounced around a little bit, and Randy actually texted this to me. Pray for people in your life because in doing so, you are showing compassion for them and leaving room for God to work on your behalf. That's one of the biggest things that we can do to build lasting relationships. You know, when you pray for somebody, you are serving them. You are being a blessing to them. When you are lifting somebody up, God, I pray for whoever it is, right? You are doing a service for them because you are bringing them before the throne of God. You're saying, God, I care about this person enough. And even if they are your enemy, even if they're treating you poorly, like Randy wrote there, you have compassion. You are showing them the love of God, the compassion of God. God, I know that they're hurting me, but they just don't get it. They don't understand yet. God, break in. Change their heart. Change their mind. Transform the situation. Romans 12:20 says, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. In other words, be the one who's taking that first step towards healing and repairing relationships. You're serving. You're being that person that is willing to take that lower place. You know, we all have it in us. I'm not going to let anybody talk to me like that. No one's going to disrespect me like that ever again. We all have that in us, right? It's always there. It will always be there. The biggest battle is actually keeping our emotions in check, keeping our perspective correct, keeping our mind right before God. And that's why Jesus, he ends this little portion of scripture that we're highlighting by saying in verse 31, just as you want people to do to you, you do to them likewise. And you know what Jesus is saying, man? If you want people to forgive you, forgive them. If you want people to help you, help them. If you want people to love you, love them. If you want people to be kind to you, be kind to them. Do to others what you would like them to do to you. And in that, you're going to start to see the building of good, solid relationships. I close with a story of a young girl, Maya. She lived in New York City. She's an artist. And she was there and kind of struggling in her career field, struggling to find inspiration. And she just, in one of her down days, she just decided to leave her studio. She would, for months on end, she would go to her studio and she would paint. And she was just isolated. She just kind of got tired of being by herself. So she went down to the park, and as she was walking through the park, she noticed an old lady sitting on the bench. And she was out there, and she was feeding pigeons, the bird lady. And as she was watching this scenario, she just decided, hey, I'm going to go sit down next to her. This woman, she just has a peace about her. So she goes over and she sits down next to this woman. And as she's sitting there, the older lady, she turns to her. And she says, what's your name, young lady? Maya. Maya's my name. What's your name? My name's Rose. It's nice to meet you. What brings you to the park, Maya? Oh, and they start talking, going back and forth. And over the course of time, Maya would go back to that park bench every other day, every time the weather was good, and she would sit down next to Miss Rose, and they started to build a relationship. What you found out was Miss Rose was actually, when she was younger, she was a talented dancer, a renowned dancer in her day and time, but she suffered a debilitating hip injury that took her out of the profession. And she missed being able to have the artistic expression and the creative expression in her life. And she began to tell Maya, hey, don't lose this. Don't waste this time in your life. And she actually encouraged Maya to get back into painting, and she helped her to find inspiration in the various things around her. And as Maya began to paint again, what ended up happening was she found that this new passion came into her art. And as she would take the art down to different galleries, people began to purchase them, buy them up, because there was something different. There was a new passion. There was a new intensity about her paintings. And Miss Rose, she gave her paintings the soul. She gave Maya the soul that her paintings needed. And in all of this, later on they wrote about this. The relationship born from a simple encounter that was initiated in the park allowed Maya to see the beauty in everyday life and translate it onto the canvas. There are going to be times where we're going through life and we are just dry, we're barren, we're struggling, we don't see the point of it anymore. But if we will allow a friend, a relationship, back into those areas of our life that are desperately needed, man, that might be the spark that you need to take a completely different approach at life again. A fresh start, a new perspective, a new look. Tonight, relationships are the most important thing. It starts with your relationship with God, and then relationships with other people. If you can't name a person that is the most important friendship in your life, then today's a good day to find a friend, to start to build a relationship. Ask God to give you a friend that will be closer than a brother, closer than a sister. God, give me somebody who I can rely on, who will be a blessing, who I can be a blessing to, who can rely on me, who can trust me, who I can trust. God, give me somebody who is going to have that depth that we all desperately need. We need these friends. Types of relationships, they're important. Relationships, right? There's power in them. Build strong relationships. Let's bow our heads tonight.